As SETA project partners, ActionAid International and the University of Bristol have been working together to develop a framework for anti-racist education to guide future policy and practice globally. This supports our aim to embed issues relevant to race and racism in global educational priorities. The position paper included here was developed in conversation with our international collaborators, for example, the Global Student Forum, the Global Campaign for Education, and Education International. This underlines the process as iterative, in conversation with others. In developing the position paper, we aim to express the following. We wanted to make clear that educational communities, for example schools and universities, address structural racism on a daily basis in their national and local contexts. We also wanted to emphasise that racism and anti-racist responses are experienced differently in these contexts. This includes how anti-racist interventions are conceptualised and described. So, for example, in some settings, it might be described as liberation education or education for community well-being. This is usually the result of different historical, political, social and cultural factors. Also, it might be that it's politically difficult for different organisations and communities to use the language of racism or anti-racism in their work. However, we aim to underline that despite differences in experiences, challenges and approaches, it is possible to identify threads, for example, of racist meanings that connect different local and national contexts into a shared global story of racism or of racist thinking. In other words, whether people experience racism due to physical, cultural, ethnic or religious differences, there is a sense of the local being sustained by the global. This appears quite simplistic to speak of a global connection of racism and anti-racism that manifest differently in local settings. However, as we, as a project, learn more from people and communities and initiatives from around the world who share their stories of anti-racist work with us, the connections become palpable. The challenge, therefore, is to articulate these connections. Of course, we are not the first to do this, i.e. to consider the global nature of racism. So, the position paper is one step in articulating these connections as we work towards advocating for the express need for international bodies to develop and respond to race and racism as real and aggravating factors in achieving global development goals. We hope it is useful and we look forward to continuing the conversation.